and Happy New Year. I'm Jolie Whitney. On this half-hour edition of Across the Fence, our focus is on the birds and the bees, and the butterflies and the bats. I'm of course talking about our pollinators. Our world depends on pollinators. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, 1 out of every 3 bites of our food is created with the help of some of our flying friends. That includes fruits, vegetables, chocolate, coffee, nuts, and spices. We begin with a story about the Vermont Bee Lab. This research and outreach laboratory located at the University of Vermont is dedicated to the protection of pollinators through research, education, and outreach. Here's Ben Willis with our story.
In Jeffords Hall on the UVM campus in Burlington, there is a small research and outreach laboratory dedicated to the protection of pollinators.
At the Vermont Bee Lab, our mission is to protect both wild and managed pollinators. So we do a lot of work with supporting beekeepers throughout the state and performing diagnostic services for beekeepers to make informed disease management decisions.
So why is the work of the Vermont Bee Lab so important?
We use our diagnostic services and kind of our resources and capabilities at the lab not only to support hobbyist beekeepers throughout the state, but also commercial operations as we gain a better understanding of and kind of quantify pathogen loads. We can support them to make better selections for breeding purposes and improve honeybee stock across the state to mitigate colony loss for our commercial operations and for our hobbyist beekeepers.
The Vermont Bee Lab was created by UVM Assistant Professor Samantha Alger, who is also the current director of the lab.
Samantha Alger started the Vermont Bee Lab as a way to protect both wild and managed pollinators. So currently we have been targeting Vermont beekeepers as a way to reduce pathogen spread into native bee populations. We found that both viruses and other pathogens are able to spread from honeybees to wild bees of all species. So this is a really great way for us to kind of identify and understand the distribution of disease across the state and understand how we can better protect wild pollinators as well. Here we are processing diagnostic samples that Vermont beekeepers have submitted to our lab to test for both varroa mites and nosema. Varroa mites are an ectoparasite that inflict honeybees by feeding off the fat bodies of the bees and weakening the colony as a whole. It's a major issue for beekeepers that we'd like to test for. We also test for nosema, and this is an endoparasite that kind of sucks the nutrients out of the bee and is often kind of unknown as a disease in a colony, so it's important for us to identify spores using microscopy for the beekeeper.
So how does someone go about submitting a sample?
So any beekeeper can submit samples free of charge to the Vermont Bee Lab if you have your own bees and are looking to evaluate the health of your bees. We have drop boxes across the state, so you can find on our website our local drop box location that you can submit your sample to. You can also ship it directly to our lab. We ask that you fill out a submission form with your sample so we have some information when we go to diagnose your bees. And then you'll receive a diagnostic report within 2 weeks after submitting your samples.
Part of the lab's mission is to provide education and public outreach to inform beekeepers, stakeholders, and the general public on the future of bees and beekeeping. I'll be checking back in with the lab soon for a closer look at some of their research and outreach programs. At the University of Vermont, I'm Ben Willis with Across the Fence.
Thanks, Ben. A couple of years ago, we introduced you to a UVM Master Gardener, Julie Parker Dickerson. Here's a woman who gets an A+ when it comes to bees. This pollinator promulgator has built several pollinator habitats in her hometown of Charlotte. Keith Silva caught up with her this past summer as she was putting the finishing touches on yet another garden. Here's Keith.
To call the intersection of Spear Street and Mount Philo Road in Charlotte a wide spot in the road would be generous, but not inaccurate. That is, until Julie Parker Dickerson showed up, and with apologies to Joni Mitchell, hauled manure and put up a paradise for pollinators.
We're at the start of Charlotte. We are at a corner that typically just gets mowed. And while it is on private property, it is it's very much open to people. We're working with homeowners, first of all, who are so generous to give a part of their land. It does take coordination. So, you know, I talk to the town and we talk to the homeowners and we talk to all these wonderful people to coordinate a good day to do this. So there's work involved in it, but it pays off in the end.
To plant this garden, Parker Dickerson did not have to break ground. Instead, she covered the grass with cardboard and then put compost and manure on top that was donated from local horse and dairy farms and planted directly into it. This no-till method makes it environmentally friendly while creating a home for insects.
So using the no-dig method, the no-till method, we've made it so we're sequestering carbon. So that's another positive for the environment. It's one less space for us to mow, another good thing. And then we're also packing plants tightly in. So we have less weeding. So we're going to be turning the soil a little bit less.
When it comes to planting pollinator gardens, Parker Dickerson is a dynamo. This is the 9th pollinator garden she's helped establish and maintain in Charlotte. All of the plants for this project are either donated or Parker Dickerson has raised funds to buy them from local greenhouses and garden centers. All of the gardens connect to Pollinator Pathway Northeast, a grassroots effort focused on establishing pollinator-friendly habitat and food sources for butterflies and bees, birds and insects.
The purpose of this garden is to connect all of our home gardens to the gardens on the roadsides to make a path, a clear path for butterflies, bees. We know that they only travel a certain distance. We know a butterfly will travel a mile. A bumblebee is only going to travel 250 yards. So knowing this information, when we build places like these, we are making interconnecting the food web for them and for us.
A pollinator garden Parker Dickerson put in less than a mile away is what brought Myra Handy out to lend her expertise to this project.
Julie forced me. No. I personally am an avid gardener. I'm also on the board of the Lewis Creek Association, which is a watershed group covering the Lewis Creek and La Platte watersheds. It's been so wonderful coming out of the pandemic when everybody's been so isolated and depressed or whatever, to have people being so enthused by something that pulls them together.
Like Handy, Kathy Hunter came out to volunteer too. She represents another local group of concerned citizens, Sustainable Charlotte.
Sustainable Charlotte is an all-volunteer organization that tries to build community resilience in the face of climate change. Julie's done a great job of getting various volunteers to come in, whether it's to do some work, to contribute some plants, or to help finance this. She's done an incredible job of getting us involved. So that seems really important to support.
And if you ask Julie if she wants plants, she always says yes.
Ty Dinnan lives nearby. What she likes about these pollinator gardens is that they attract more than birds and bees.
And so what I've seen is that having the gardens, doing meetups to take care of the gardens, talking about the gardens is something that has created community connections. So that's my favorite part, and it also is beneficial on so many different levels in terms of wildlife and pollinators and just beauty.
For Parker Dickerson, pollinator gardens are a way to demonstrate how one person or a small group of people can take on big problems like pollinator decline and climate change.
Really, at the end of the day, what we need is more bees and butterflies and moths. When we do something like this, it inspires people to do something about climate change versus feeling sad about it. So I feel like the more pollinator gardens we put in and the more beauty people see, the less people are going to see the doom and gloom and get inspired to do something in their own.
So next time you're driving through Charlotte, follow the flight of the bumblebee, bird, and butterfly, and visit a piece of paradise. In Charlotte, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Of all of our recent bee stories, the one that got straight A's when it came to suspense and surprise was Ben Willis's report on UBO, or unhealthy brood odor. Like all livestock, bees are susceptible to all sorts of pests and pathogens. The varroa mite, also known as the varroa destructor, is a beekeeper's worst nightmare. Researchers at UVM's Bee Lab, which we featured earlier in our program, are testing a strategy using pheromones, which may help bees fight this deadly pest.
Dry erase.
Oh, they're all in here.
Nice.
Vermont Bee Lab Director Samantha Alger and her team of technicians are in Bristol, Vermont to work with Andrew Munkris, president of the Vermont Beekeepers Association.
Oh, there it is. The Vermont Bee Lab has been partnering with commercial beekeepers who are bee breeders to help them with their selection processes. So over time, that goal is to create bees that are more resistant to different pests and pathogens and are healthier, better honey producers, better at overwintering.
For this research, Samantha and her team will be applying a pheromone called unhealthy brood odor, or UBO. This innovative research could help breed bees more resistant to the varroa mite.
Pretty much every beekeeper is going to agree that the varroa mite is the #1 enemy of the honeybee. It's not a pest that's native to the honeybee. It started on another species and jumped. And so the honeybee has very few defenses against it. So if we can breed in this hygienic behavior and create some resistance in the honeybee population in general, or at large, that would be huge.
UBO is a synthetic hormone, which works by mimicking the pheromone released from bees suffering from a varroa mite infestation. It triggers a response in bee colonies and can reveal to the scientists which colonies are more pest resistant.
We know that disease and pests and pathogens aren't the only threat that bees are experiencing, but it's a big one, and these things kind of act
really good to know. Okay.
synergistically, right? Like if bees are sicker because the varroa mites are preying on them, then their immune systems are impacted, and any pesticides they are exposed to or forage deficiencies, it just all gets compounded. What we're going to do at this makeshift table is this is where we're actually going to be applying the synthetic pheromone, the UBO mixture, using this. The beekeepers are going to be going through the nucleus colonies, finding a frame of mostly capped brood and bringing it over to us. We're going to spray it onto the frame, and then we're going to put the frame back into the hive, and then we're going to go back into that hive 2 hours later to see how well the bees sense this pheromone, and hopefully there'll be a lot of cheering when we go back and check to see how well they performed.
For the next 2 hours, Samantha and her team get to work. They use a small collar to meticulously apply a tiny amount of UBO to a specific part of each frame, until they have sprayed a frame from every hive in the nuke yard. The theory is that the more hygienic bees will react to the smell of this pheromone when it is sprayed onto pupa in the colony.
So some colonies of bees demonstrate hygienic behavior, which means that they will actually clean off or groom off the mites that are on the bees, and those are the ones we want to be breeding from so that we can populate our operation and other operations with bees that have a natural defense in this hygienic behavior against the varroa mite.
This move to work more closely with commercial bee breeders is something new for UVM's Bee Lab.
Our diagnostic lab that we've been running for a number of years now has been largely focused on helping hobbyist beekeepers that are interested in learning about the levels of pests and pathogens in their hives. But what we notice is that it is largely just the hobbyists who are using that service, and not so much the commercial beekeepers or the sideliners. And so the Bee Lab thought that it would be cool if we started to work more closely with commercial beekeepers, particularly bee producers, to help better select for bees that are more resistant to the pests and pathogens, because the bee producers are the ones that are supplying all the bees to the hobbyists. And so it'd be really starting at the source of the genetics.
Today's innovative approach, using UBO to aid bee breeders, was developed by Dr. Carol Wagner at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro.
I think as a grad student, Kara discovered that the brood, when it's diseased or infected, it emits pheromones to tell the sister bees, hey, I'm sick. And so then she spent the next 10 years or so figuring out how to synthesize it. Kara just got completely inundated when she started to announce this stuff. Bee breeders are like, thinking this could be, I don't know if it is the magic bullet, but beekeepers are thinking that this is really promising for their breeding programs.
This is, kind of cutting edge. There's a very much, there's a test with much lower sensitivity where you use liquid nitrogen to freeze kill the brood, and you leave it for 24 to 48 hours and you come back. But there, it's not actually mimicking what's happening in nature because you're actually killing the brood, and so you're only finding colonies that are hygienic enough to remove actually dead brood. And what we're looking for is much more sensitive than that. We're looking for colonies that are hygienic enough to be removing parasitized brood that has the mites on it.
After each frame is sprayed with UBO, it is returned to the hive, and the scientists wait to see if the colony will respond.
At the 2-hour mark, we're going to pull that frame again, and we're going to place the collar back on the same location where we sprayed the pheromone and take an after photo. And with any luck, many of these hives will have started to detect this synthetic pheromone that says that the brood is unhealthy in one way or another, and the bees will have started to uncap that brood.
As the 2-hour window drew to a close, the scientists counted down as the final minute approached.
We got 1 minute.
Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
I don't know about you, I'm ready.
He's ready.
He's ready.
No, not very exciting.
Oh, well.
It will take years to consistently breed in these traits, so it's possible we will not see any hygienic activity today.
Well,
looks like
no.
another dud. There you go.
I'll look again.
Looks like maybe they uncapped one.
But then, Bee Lab Tech Sydney Miller spots a promising sign.
This is where they've chewed open capping, so you can see pupa in there that are developing. So typically they would be closed like this. But the bees have gone in to inspect because they smell like they're diseased because we sprayed the pheromone on there. So they've actually not only uncapped the wax, but they've started to chew out those pupa. So they were pretty aggressive about it. It doesn't look like they uncapped all of them, but we'll see when we do data analysis what that percentage is.
Then we saw something truly stunning. The bees not only removed the wax cap to investigate the area sprayed with UBO, but we witnessed them entering a cell and removing a pupa they believe is infected with varroa mites.
Most of the results at this point are pretty preliminary. However, I was on a Zoom presentation with David Tarpey, who's a national queen expert, and a couple of the other queen breeders on there were very interested in this UBO. And when I shared that we were participating with UVM in this continuing research project, they were extremely interested. So among the commercial beekeeping community, there's a lot of interest and hope that this might be a much more sensitive selection process for hygienic behavior than we've had in the past.
The journey may be long, but the rewards could be sweet as these scientists work together to ensure a thriving and sustainable future for honeybees. In Bristol, Vermont, I'm Ben Willis with Across the Fence.
To round out our Pollinatorpalooza today, we're showing highlights from the recent program by the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food, and Markets. The topic was neonicotinoids, another threat to the honeybees. This pesticide helps farmers but could be a hindrance to the pollinators. This is a complicated case. Farmers use neonics to protect crops from pests, but beneficial insects like pollinators are also being exposed. Keith Silva began this discussion talking to Brooke Decker about the role of the agency's longstanding apiary program.
The Vermont Apiary program was first established about 100 years ago, and it was established to combat the biggest issue facing honeybees at the time, which was American foul brood, which is a highly contagious, fatal honeybee disease that spreads rapidly, or can spread rapidly. But over the years, the program has evolved and adapted to various pressures and changes that that the honeybees are facing. And right now, today, the biggest issue the honeybees are facing are a parasite called the varroa mite that causes a lot of issues with the honeybee.
What does a pollinator health specialist do?
Yeah, so most beekeepers know me as the bee inspector, so not as fancy, but so really I wear many hats in this role, but primarily I administer the apiary program through the Agency of Agriculture, and that has three main components, one being registration, so all honeybees need to be registered. That's whether you have one colony in your backyard or you have thousands throughout the state and you're a honey producer. So all those need to be registered, and then there's apiary inspections that we're out there in the field looking in honeybee colonies, mitigating pests and diseases, and also there's some regulatory requirements along with those inspections, like if you're selling bees, for instance, they need that. And then another huge component that I spend a lot of time on is education and outreach, really, with working with beekeepers. Honeybee management is really difficult. There's a steep learning curve, so we work a lot with beekeepers on best management practices and how to keep healthy colonies.
And Stephen, I see you nodding your head. Across the Fence in the past year has highlighted several community education and outreach efforts regarding pollinator habitats. And this is something that you're very big on, is increasing pollinator habitats.
Absolutely. Whenever we can make land use decisions that favor increasing wildlife and pollinator habitat, that's what we ought to be doing. And there's a lot of resources on that, and we're going to be working on more research a lot with UVM on that. But yeah, we need to make land use decisions that support native and managed pollinators whenever we can.
And pollinators, whether it's a honeybee or a wild bee, they don't discriminate when it comes to where they get the pollen that they need or the nectar that they need. So any place where you have native plants or plants that favor pollinators, it's going to be a positive impact.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have lots of opportunities.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the threats to Vermont's honeybees? What are they susceptible to?
Yeah, I mean, like Steve talked about, habitat is really important for honeybees. And so over the years, with the Vermont's landscape changing, that has had an effect on honeybees. And then climate change has had an effect on honeybees and probably all pollinators, but though I like to talk about honeybees the most. Just thinking of the past few years, we've had drought conditions where the nectar resources are less available, and then all the way to flooding when then there's no nectar available in that case as well.
Talk to me about the Vermont Educational Innovation Board. What is that?
Oh, the Agricultural
I'm sorry.
Mixing programs.
Yes.
No, so the Agricultural Innovation Board is established by the legislature in 2021, and it was designed and designated to look at specific issues dealing with agriculture and the environment. So far, the board has had 17, sorry, getting my numbers wrong here, 17 public meetings dealing with neonicotinoid treated seeds. We've heard from a range of experts on all the different aspects of the pest control needs for the farmers, the seed availability, the types of pests that are being controlled, economic thresholds, environmental impacts, human health impacts, all that's been taken together. And so what the board has come to after evaluating all that is a recognition that we need to learn more about how to manage this in Vermont.
And Stephen, if people want to hear you talk some more, the University of Vermont Northwest Crops and Soils program is hosting a webinar on neonicotinoids. Visit their website for more details.
That's our program for today. From all of us across the fence, we wish you a happy 2024. I'm Jolie Whitney. Have a good one.